Yo, I've just had to run in, so I'm not really prepared or anything, and but I'm going to sort of prepare myself as I go along. I mightn't be able to see the messages as they come in because I don't have them out in front of me. I've got the computer turned on. I need to connect the telephone to the computer. So anyway, these things happen. I could have actually done this outside, and that would have been perhaps a little bit easier for me. I have done them outside just holding the camera in my hand. However, it would of course got dark, and then it would have been much more difficult for me. Anyway, today I decided to do, obviously in a nautical mood, and I wanted to do another nautical subject, which is on a submarine. And but before I start on that, maybe I could mention a point that was made yesterday, a very good point, which came up, was that about the Goya. And the question was put that, well, the Goya perhaps wasn't the second greatest marine disaster. When I say greatest, I mean in terms of lives lost. Not only great, is it? It wasn't the second biggest disaster in terms of humans, but maybe it was the Armenia. Now, the Armenia was a ship that was running initially between Odessa and I think it was running from Odessa to Sevastopol, and then it was running from Odessa to Novorossiysk. And so it was evacuated people from Odessa, and then it was evacuating people from Crimea. And so the point was put that this was the greatest, because about 7,000 people were lost. Having said that, I think, having looked at the Armenia, that in its first 15 runs it had an average around 1,000 passengers on it. And so the fact that suggesting it might have had 7,000, I'm not saying it's impossible. I just rather feel that it would be rather unlikely. And so if anybody else has got any feelings on that, I did mean to try and look at some records from the time. Now, the Soviet government in 1941 or 2 said that 5,000 people are on it, and the Soviet government is actually not exactly noted for telling the truth and for exaggerating, and this is the sort of thing that it probably would have exaggerated. Anyway, so today I'm going to talk about the U1206. The U1206, which was built in Gdansk, in the Gdansk shipyard, except it was called the Royal Danzig shipyard at the time. And if you go there today, it is a really, really very attractive to actually look at. I think. I mean, it looks a bit like industrial desolation, but for me, this is just the sort of thing that really appeals to me. Now, the U1206 was a Type VIIC submarine. This is the most successful submarine, if you're taking that submarine successful, if it sinks lots of ships. So it was 67.1 meters long. It had a pressure hull measuring 50.5 meters and outer width 6.2 meters, and the pressure hull was 4.7. It could reach a surface speed of 17.6 knots, and underwater it could do 7.6 knots. It had a range of 12,000 kilometers. That's on the surface, and that's assuming it's going at 12 knots, which is probably the equivalent of doing 90 kilometers an hour in a car, which is the maximum fuel efficiency. It could also do 150 kilometers underwater at 4 knots. It was designed to dive to 100 meters, although tested it went to 165 meters. At the time, it was reckoned that it could probably go down to 250 meters, although recent tests have suggested that these submarines could go to 280 meters. So really got a huge depth for inland seas, not the very deep ocean. It would work very well. Now, there's one thing about submarines, which even was talking about the Gustav the other day, which I've been thinking about. I don't quite understand this. They had these submarine the Type VIIc had 5 torpedo tubes, 4 front and 1 at the end, and they only had 14 torpedoes. Obviously, they also had the deck gun as well. But often, so you got 14 torpedoes on board, and if you fire 4 at a ship, you're only going to get really 3.5 goes at firing the things. And I've often wondered, why do they fire all this many? Now, there is a problem with torpedoes not working even today. That this is a problem. But I mean, it always seems to me to be, for example, in the case of the Gustav that we had the other day, it seemed to be a dreadful waste in a target-rich environment when just fire 1, and because the 1 will just bring the ship down. I know that people are trained to fire 3. Anyway, if somebody knows about torpedoes, they might actually want to say something about that. So the 1206 was a training boat. It was in the 8th U-boat flotilla. Then it was transferred to the 11th U-boat flotilla and placed under Captain Lieutenant Karl Adolf Schlitt. Be careful with his name, because there'll be some rude jokes a bit later on this one. And so the submarine also had a snorkel, and the snorkel was put instead of the outboard gun. And so this really meant to say that it could charge its batteries underwater. Now, Karl was born on the 16th of April 1908, and so in Kiel, or the region of Kiel. And so Kiel has a strong naval tradition. They had the Kiel Canal, which was built in 1905. And so I think even today, I think is it the base of the German Navy today? Well, maybe. But it's very much linked to the sea. Now, the snorkel, I'll come back to this a bit, because this was invented in the Netherlands before the war. But unfortunately, the Nazis actually captured Dutch submarines. There was a number of them which were then turned around and used, at least 3 that I'm aware of, UD 3, 4, and 5. And so they had the snorkel. They got the snorkel technology off the Dutch, and so therefore they were able to actually use it themselves. In many cases, these snorkels were retrofitted. Now, on the 28th of March 1945, this submarine left Kiel left Kiel, yes, and it was on its way to Norway. It got to Norway on the 30th of March and left there on the 2nd of April 1945. So it went to Kristiansand, also Norway, so 6th of April. And so then its plan was to patrol off the British coast to see if it actually came across any ships. And on the 9th of April, though, it had a problem with its engine. And on the 13th of April, the engine completely failed. It's the starboard engine. So the mechanics couldn't do anything about it. There was even a British ship that passed by, 8,000 GRT, but they couldn't do anything about it. Now, this story I'm about to tell you is I'm going to give you what I think actually happened. And what I think actually happened isn't as exciting as what most people will tell you, who will tell you this story. And this is about a ship that went down, a submarine, this one, because of an accident with its toilet. Now, in my normal job, I happen to deal with toilets a fair bit, because as some of you may know, I work with motorhomes, and with motorhomes, you've got effectively 3 solutions. One is called a septic tank, that they have in mainly the United States. Second one is with cassettes, so you've got a little box you pull out, it's a plastic box, and then you dump it somewhere. And the third one is the new methods, which are things like using plastic bags and all sorts, and composting materials and the like. Now, so that's how it works in a motorhome. With a submarine, in the German submarines in the Second World War, you had a septic tank, and what they would do is they dump the septic tank in the sea. And I don't want to hear of anybody actually doing that with any motorhomes. Now, the Allies actually had to dump their it when they got back to base. They were carrying their waste around with them. Now, the advantage in the German system is that you're not carrying a pile of waste that you don't really need to do. So you can actually, and this would, of course, put less stress on the boat with weight and all the rest of it. But this did lead to the problem that when the Allied air control, the septic tanks weren't big enough to take very long periods of being underwater, and they had to be underwater because you've got if you put the snorkel up, you might be able to charge the electric batteries, but it's a problem. Now, what you're going to do with all of this waste? Now, they came up with a solution, which was to use high pressure to. I don't even want to explain this. Okay, it was an extremely complicated solution to try and control the amount of the waste that was actually in. But now, in the Imperial War Museum in London, there was an example of how it worked in a British submarine. And there was this, unfortunately, they've changed their displays. It used to be on the ground floor. I don't know where it is now. It's moved. But on the submarine, we got instructions of how to use the water closet. And you had to sort of open things and close things and open things. And now, as far as the Germans were concerned, you had to have one person who was trained to use how the toilet flushed, if you like, how it got. So the wastewater is fed in through valves through a series of chambers, and until it ended up in a compressed airlock, and from there it was shot out into the sea. Is that a good explanation? Is that a good one or not? Anybody not? Anyway, okay. Well, if you're quite happy with that explanation, that's fair enough. What's that? Maceration? No, it wasn't macerate. Maceration is when you have this in motorhomes, for example. And you have it in flats as well sometimes. In old flats, when they try to put toilets in where there weren't toilets before, and maceration sort of knives, and that sort of chops it all up. And so in fact, a macerator. With some of these things, have got these wet wipes and things of that nature, then that possibly wouldn't be such a bad idea. Anyway, so now, according to the story you'll hear from other people, on the 14th of April 1945, Captain Schlitt needed to use the toilet. So anyway, he must have done something wrong, or something went wrong somewhere, because instead of his waste going down the toilet, it came up at him, and it was all mixed with seaweed. Now, I'm sure this is an unpleasant experience, and it would appear that either the outside valve failed to work or it hadn't actually engaged. So the toilet specialist was called in, and in the meantime, the captain went to the engine room to order help to do something with the faulty diesel engine. However, the toilet engineer was unable to close the toilet locks. And when the seawater then got inside, it got to the batteries located under the toilet, and that in itself is rather suspicious. So you got the toxic chlorine gas is going to form. And in this situation, the only thing that can be done is for the submarine to surface as quickly as possible, and for fresh air to be pumped in, to all the hatches to be opened. And to be able to do this, all the torpedoes in the launch tubes had to be ejected. So when they got to the surface, and the submarine had the really bad luck to be spotted by a Royal Air Force plane, and then the Schlitt ordered the U-boat to scuttle itself, and for everyone to get into dinghies and make for the coast. And unfortunately, one man was killed in the air attack, and 3 were drowned. Eight seamen reached the shore, and 23 of them were still in the water when the British naval trawler Nodzu had turned up and rescued them. A British sloop called Nonsuch saved 9, and 14 were saved by fishermen. So some of them were taken to Aberdeen as POWs, others ended up in Peterhead police station, and then they were taken to London for questioning. And of the 46 of them in total were taken prisoner. And Schlitt stayed in the United Kingdom until 1948. So according to this story, the submarine actually sunk because the toilet wasn't working. And if you look this up on many sites, that's what they'll actually tell you. Now, the reason I chose this story for today actually wasn't because I was in a maritime mood. It was because this morning I was looking at the Russian website, reading about the Ukraine war, and there was one of the little things below. They had a story on this as well, and they left the story at this place. So this submarine sunk because of the toilet not working, and you'll find that in lots of other places as well. And that's where the story ends. But I'm going to tell you what actually really did happen, and it's not as exciting as the toilet not working. So, 2012, the wreck of 1206 was actually found, and it was in good conditions. And one of the torpedoes was still in its chamber, so the captain didn't actually know that. The captain had actually died 3 years earlier, aged 90. But before dying, he told his son the truth of what had happened. So you've got the situation that it's the middle of April. He's been sent off to patrol the British coast. Meanwhile, the Red Army is almost in Berlin, and 80% of everyone who was serving on U-boats was dead. Now, at the end of the First World War, there'd been a mutiny on the German Navy. And the reason for the mutiny was because the ships had been ordered out of port to go and have a heroic last go at the Royal Navy. Well, they didn't fancy dying for nothing, so they mutinied instead. Makes sense to me. And maybe the captain felt that also might happen. But in any case, he thought his loyalty was to his crew and not to the mad dictator. And so he had this idea. So the officers got together and they decided to surrender. But they had to come up with a reasonable excuse. They couldn't just sail into Plymouth Harbour and hand over the submarine. So they came up with this story as a way of covering themselves. And not so much covering themselves, because they would be in British hands anyway, but covering their families so that their families wouldn't be in trouble. I mean, there have been cases where there was the Sippenhaft, when they'd get hold members of the family hostage, and so maybe that's what they felt. As deserters, of course, if you've seen the film The Mackenzie Break, I don't suggest that that's accurate, but they may have felt that as deserters they could be badly treated by the prisoners. Indeed, there was a case of German deserters being shot by German POWs and permitted to do so by the Canadian Army. I've got a video on that. It's called, I think it's called The Last Jew Killed by Hitler. So I can't remember exactly what I called it, but that was my video, and I can't remember what I called it because I keep changing my mind. But I did that three years ago. Anyway, so I've done a video on the last person to be actually shot like that, and he was shot after the war. Anyway, so I think that Captain Schlitt did his duty to his crew members. There is, unfortunately, 4 people were killed. One was drowned, and 3 were drowned, and 1 was killed in the air attack. But at least the others got out of that submarine alive, and they lived to tell the story. And when you see somebody saying next time, there are videos on YouTube about the toilet being responsible, but it's not true. But I did warn you that the story I was going to tell you isn't as exciting as the real thing. Anyway, good. Let's have a look at some of the questions, if I can call them up. Sorry, it's usually easier for me because I've got my computer connected, but I haven't got it today connected. So hello, Mike and Craig and Colin. And so if I missed somebody out, I apologize, Jason. And Yeah. So Colin mentions in Gdansk, the shipyard's workers' monument is small but quite profound. Jason says that's a slow sub. I don't know. That seems to be quite good to me. Colin says didn't mean the Solidarność monument. There's lots of monuments around there, but it's really, I think it's a really great place. I'll have to do a guided tour one day. Though I don't really know what all the places were used for, so maybe I wouldn't be very good at it. I have done videos actually standing out there, but nobody voted. Sorry, people did vote for them, but it didn't win the competition. But it's still sort of sitting there. So Colin says, a friend of mine worked at the Royal Navy Torpedo Research Establishment in Portland, and he reckoned the two problems were always the gyroscope and the propellant. There's not a lot left after those two. Yeah, that's true. Yes, I would agree with that. During the Falklands War, when the Belgrano was sunk, was sunk using torpedoes, which dated from the Second World War. It did have up-to-date torpedoes, but the captain in the submarine said that he wanted to be sure that the thing was going to blow up when it hit it. So that's why he chose the ones he knew were more likely to work. So yeah, Jason says seems like the Germans made slow subs, and oh, so Collins said it happened as a plot in the Secret Army. Oh dear. All right. Did it? So the plot was that the toilet not to work. Jason asked, where is the submarine? Just a minute. I've got it. Well, Jason, I've got it here in front of me. It's at 57 degrees 21 minutes north, 1 degree 39 minutes west. And if you still want to know and you remind me, I'll put that in the description. 12 nautical miles off Crudian Bay at a depth of around 70 meters. So yeah, so it's the pressure hull is going to be quite all right at that depth. Okay, so well, thanks very much. I'll tomorrow if I get up and I'm reading stuff on some Russian website, and then I feel in the mood for something which I feel I can talk about, which is wrong, then I'll talk about that. But for tomorrow's talk, no, sorry, tomorrow we've got a film, so Saturday's talk. So I'll be Saturdays. Tomorrow's video is on the first death sentence in Nazi Germany. Why the murderer, as it turned out, he was a murderer, why he was executed. Okay, thanks for watching. All the best and bye for now.